1, 2, 3, 4. I got thoughts running through my head. I got thoughts, can't you see? I got thoughts, the books I read. I got thoughts, won't you listen to me?
The No Circuit was my second, fully realized novel, cyberpunk novel. It's probably the fifth or sixth that I've actually written, um, many of which thankfully were not published because they were not very good. But I wrote this as a blog, and it's funny how my views on this book have changed. When I first wrote it, liked it. One of the first reviews I read said something like it was a more coherent, tight narrative than the first book. I thought, yeah, that's pretty cool. Let's go. Yeah, I got that. And then a few years later, when I was working with the voice talent to do the audiobook for this one, and I'm following along. Uh, I'm listening to his takes and reading along with it to make sure he hasn't missed a word or mispronounced something. Just the normal edits. In the audiobook version and in reading along with the audiobook version, the book felt disjointed. Felt really, and I'm not quite sure why, but it felt like the writing itself was maybe a little more stilted and terse, and it didn't flow as well. But on this next reread, this next one, I actually don't have that much of a problem with the writing anymore. Um, there are, still some technical things here and there. I think I used the word "but" to start a sentence way too many times. But as I read it this time, I actually like it a bit more than the last time, than the time I read it for the audiobooks. So I'm going to say 3.5 to 4 stars would be my, I think, honest review of it. I've probably waffled between 3 to 4 uh, a number of times, but I think about 3 to 5 to 4. I think there's definitely some progression. Certainly more comfortable with the character of Bridge and with some of the characters around him. And I think some of the interactions and the character development with Aristotle were strong. I thought they're real good in there. And even some of the stuff with Bud from the Naturalist and the whole discussion with Stonewall and Aristotle, I thought that was pretty good. I actually liked the Crusader story and the way Bridge told the story. I kind of like his patter on that. So yeah, overall, my opinion has softened since the last time I read it, and has probably gone back to about how I felt when I first read it. I think it works better written word as opposed to an audiobook. There's nothing wrong with the audiobook, but I think it feels stilted in the audiobook, where it doesn't necessarily feel quite that bad on the written word in the ebook or the paperback. Read it, buy it, like it, comment on it, give me a review on it, comment down below. One of the things I'll point out, just as the last political aside, in the intro, I talk about something that was happening at the time, which was Citizens United. That, if you don't know what that is I think it's Citizens United versus United States, or I'm not sure the name of it. It's a court case that went before the Supreme Court. And the origins of the case were that some dipshits, and I say dipshits, lovingly, made a movie about Hillary Clinton. And I believe this was before the 2008 election, when everybody thought she would be the front runner and she would beat Obama and anybody else, and she would be the one that would go run for president in 2008 to succeed Bush. And as far as I remember, the movie was basically just propaganda bullshit, but somebody refused to air it, and so somebody refused to air it, or it was flagged as political speech or something like that, and the dipshits that made it went to the Supreme Court to say that spending money on this movie or commercials or whatever it was free speech. And just because you had more money, the amount of money you had didn't matter. Spending money on political things was an act of free speech, on political advertisements or things like that. So that you couldn't restrict that, because the restriction on spending that money, whether you were saying utter toss or not, didn't matter. Whether you were lying off your ass or what, it didn't matter. It was still political speech. So Citizens United is the name of the court, what the court case has been called now, which basically said that money is the same as free speech. So by that, by the transitive property, more money is more free speech, so people who are richer have more free speech. The court didn't seem to care about that. Chief Justice Roberts did not seem to care that mattered. Degrees didn't matter. It was just, it's free speech, so you can't restrict it. So because of that, I believe the FCC set up what we call super PACs now, super political action committees. And the FCC basically said, okay, we can't restrict who you, we can't restrict what you say, can't stop you from saying it. And political action committees, because of Citizens United, do not have to report their donors. So basically, it's free speech. You can say whatever you want, but you don't actually have to identify who's saying it. As like if Gary Ballard, wants to say that President Trump fucks goats, I can say that. If I have the money to and want to run this political action committee that is Trump fucks goats, I can do that too. Which, we're fine so far. I don't have to tell you that I'm the one saying Trump fucks goats. It's actually this LLC, Trump fucks goats LLC. Which, means that the consequences of what you say, which is what free speech is really, is really about. The government cannot restrict your free speech, but free speech doesn't mean you should be free from consequences. If you yell fire in a theater, in a crowded theater, and people die, it's your fault. So that's actually settled, as far as I know, that's settled case law. You can't just yell fire in a crowded theater and expect to have no consequences from that. Freedom of speech does not protect you from consequences. If I say that Trump fucks goats, Gary Ballard says Trump fucks goats, and Trump is next to me and takes his tiny little hands and wants to punch me, well, the law doesn't stop him from doing that. It might punish him for punching me, but it can't restrict him from punching me because that's a consequence of my freedom of speech. PACs, super PACs, and whatever, basically have almost no rules, and they are not required to tell you who their donors are. So they can have free speech, but they don't have to have the legal consequences of that speech. They don't have to back up their words, and they don't have to tell you who's saying what is what. So they can lie off their ass, say any damn thing they want, and there's no consequences for it. And the only real restriction that you have is that you can't coordinate with a campaign. So like, you can't run a series of ads saying that you want people to vote for Trump, but you can run a series of ads saying this policy that is Trump's is good. And you don't have to tell people that, you may have some benefit to gain from that policy being enacted. Koch brothers have been using this shit for years, and it's how they're getting away with so much garbage. So as long as you're not coordinating with the campaign, but then of course that also requires that the FEC, the Federal Election Commission, actually have the ability to enforce the law, ability and desire to enforce the law. There have been numerous instances from the 2016 campaign of people who work for the Trump campaign having companies that run ads through super PACs for the Trump campaign. And it's people who work in both the people running the ads, people creating the ads, and in the Trump campaign. So in all three of those things, they're all the same person. And yet they get away with that, even though technically it's illegal, because you can't say you weren't coordinating with the campaign if you're a member of the campaign who's also running the ads. That doesn't work. But that's where we're at with Citizens United. And I discussed that in the intro to the book, which is why I'm rambling about it right now. I'll just get on my soapbox for a minute about political action committees and politics, and I want to give a shout out to Stephen Colbert, because on his old show, his old the Colbert Report, and even on the Late Show with Stephen Colbert, he has pointed this out over and over and over again, is that this is some bullshit right here. This is, I can say whatever I want with no consequences, and I can take as much money as I want and do whatever the hell I want with the money, because I don't have to report the money necessarily. I can pay myself as a consultant of the PAC, take in all that money, have the PAC pay me as a consultant, as an outside consultant through an LLC, and that's perfectly legal. So, as part of this soapbox, I want to point out something that Senator Mitch McConnell from Kentucky, who's the Senate Majority Leader for the Republicans, has done in the last month or two, I think. One of the FEC, Federal Election Commission, has, I want to say 9 commissioners. It has commissioners, but they have a quorum. You have to have X number of commissioners to meet and to actually conduct business. Well, they're under that quorum now. One of them recently resigned to go do something else, and McConnell is basically refusing to nominate anyone, or to have anyone nominated, or have any nominees be seated. So now the Federal Election Commission can't do its job because there's not enough fucking people on the commission. Which means that all the fuckery that the Russians did in 2016 and 2018 and are doing now in 2020 and are attempting to do, they can get away with even easier because the Federal Election Commission can't even investigate shit that goes down and have meetings on it and look into these things because there's not a quorum. And there's not a quorum because Senator Mitch McConnell, otherwise known as Moscow Mitch these days, is not enabling that to happen. Now, whether or not he nominated a complete asshole, a crook, one of the Koch brothers, Pennywise the Clown, at least if he had nominated multiple someone so that they could field a quorum, there's at least the possibility that democracy can be protected. By not doing so, by enacting, by not having to do anything, he has ensured that our democracy is weakened and is ripe for the picking for the multiple foreign actors that we have trying to meddle in our elections, which include the Russians, the Chinese, the Saudis, the Israelis. Now, I don't care what your politics are. I don't. I do, but in this instance, I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, authoritarian, socialist, social democrat, libertarian, Green Party, loony party, whatever. I don't care what your party affiliation is. If you give even the slightest amount of lip service to saying that we have freedom in this country because of democratic institutions, this should incense you. Whether you think we should have government-run health care or it should all be private market, this should piss you off. Whether you believe that we should have drones assassinating U.S. citizens in foreign countries when they declare as terrorists, or whether we should have government intrusion on a woman's right to choose or not. Whatever your affiliation, if you state at any point that you are for democracy, this cannot stand. This is the kind of thing that destroys democracies from within. And it is the basest, most trifling, venal corruption that is at the heart of it. Because I guarantee you, the people who are involved, the people who are doing this, don't give a rat's ass what their policies are or what they say or what they claim to believe in. They are doing this simply to enrich themselves in some way, shape, or form. Whether it be to keep power in the Senate, or if you're the NRA, to continue to sell guns, for the gun manufacturers to continue to sell more and more guns, even though we have more than enough guns on the streets of this country to overthrow 6 countries. Or even if it's just, to take expensive, lavish private jet trips on taxpayers' dime. It's all for the most trifling of reasons. It's all for greed. There's no political ideology behind it. None. They can claim all they want, but Mitch McConnell has shown he has never, ever had any political ideology beyond saying and doing whatever he has to do to maintain his power and the donor gravy train. And I will say the same goes for the president and for most of the people he has actually appointed to cabinet roles. It's venal, it's trifling, it's trivial, and it's destroying democracy from within for the enrichment of a few. Soapbox done. Citizens United is a horrible thing, and if you have any inkling, if you have any inclination that LGLs, local government licenses, and corporate-run city-states are a bad thing, or at the very least is not something we want to just have happen, you need to be out there voting against people like Mitch McConnell, people who don't care about democracy and only care about money. I'm going to say, I don't think you should vote for a Republican. That's my personal opinion. You're welcome to vote for whoever you want. But look at the history of what these people do, not what they say. Look at what they do. And people like Mitch McConnell, if you want to vote to primary him, that's fine. Get him out of there. But vote. Go vote. Go inform yourself about the people that you are hiring to administer your government. So that's the no circuit, and a whole bunch of political stuff on top of it because I can. As always, subscribe to the channel, or subscribe, whichever one it is. Drop a comment if you like what I say, or if you think I'm full of shit, or even anywhere in between. If you've bought the No Circuit or any of my books, please, please, please review them at whatever outlet you bought them from. Multiple outlets if you want to. If you're on Goodreads or mobile read forums, give me a good review. Give me a bad review. Just give me a review. Let people, as long as people are talking about my book, that usually is good for me. I appreciate anyone who has bothered to sit through however many episodes of this there's been. I believe next week, maybe a little bit longer. It depends on where I'm at when I get done with this. I'll be discussing one of my Cthulhu novellas. Once I'm done with that, I should hopefully come back and we'll talk a little bit more about If Tribe Equals, the 3rd book in the Bridge Chronicles series. This has been The Author Has Thoughts, and I'm the author in question. Hope you have a good one. No kick from cocaine.